In this movie, I'll show you how to save any and all changes that you've made to your document. Notice up here in the Title tab at the top of the screen, we're seeing that this document is called 8pagenewsletter.ai and that it has an asterisk at the end of its file name. That asterisk tells us that we have unsaved changes associated with this document. And so there's two ways to update the file. One is to go up to the File menu and choose the standard Save command, or you have that standard keyboard shortcut of Control-S here on the PC or Command-S on the Mac, in which case you're going to get this alert message that is telling you that you're about to save to a so-called legacy format, which means you could possibly lose some of your data. In our case, this actually isn't true. What I've done is I've gone ahead and saved nearly all of the documents I'll be giving you to the CS6 format. And the reason is that keeps those files backward compatible without losing anything important. So if you're working along with me and you trust my judgment, then what you should do is just go ahead and turn on the Don't Show Again checkbox and click OK. But what I'm going to do is save a separate version of this document. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel out of that alert message. And now I'll return to the File menu and choose the Save As command. Or you've got a slightly different keyboard shortcut of Control-Shift-S here on the PC or Command-Shift-S on the Mac. And that's going to bring up the Save As dialog box, which allows you to change the name and location of your file. I'm just going to go ahead and call this file My New Document. I'm not including it along with this folder or anything. I'm just creating it on the fly. And then I'll go ahead and click the Save button in order to bring up the big Illustrator Options dialog box. Now, it's pretty confusing. There's a lot of stuff going on here. So if you like, you can just go ahead and click the OK button because the default settings that we're seeing right here are the safest settings of them all. However, I want you to know everything that's going on. And we're going to start with these checkboxes right here. Notice this first guy, Create PDF Compatible File. What that does is it embeds all the PDF information that's necessary to view the file either in the free Adobe Reader, which anyone can download from adobe.com, or inside the professional version of Adobe Acrobat. You also need this checkbox to be turned on if you want to import the file into InDesign, which is my way of saying you almost always want to leave this checkbox turned on. The only reason you would ever turn it off, and it's a little bit dangerous, is to save on the file size. If you need the smallest file possible, whether because you're emailing it to another person or what have you, then you might turn this checkbox off. The good news is you could always go back to this file and turn it on again when you save it in the future. Embed ICC Profiles goes ahead and tells another application what color space you're working in. For now, just make sure you leave that checkbox turned on because turning it off doesn't really do you any good. It just saves a few K in terms of the file size. Next, we have this Use Compression checkbox. That's going to apply lossless compression to the file. So it's not going to hurt the file at all, and it is going to give you a smaller illustration. So you want to leave this checkbox on as well. So you want to leave this checkbox turned on as well. And then this final checkbox allows you to save each artboard to a separate file if you're so inclined. And you rarely do that unless you're saving to an archival file format, which takes us to this version option way up here at the top of the dialog box. So notice, in addition to the Illustrator CC format, we've got just about everything before Illustrator CC, starting with CS6 and going all the way back to Illustrator 3, which is a product that was introduced in the early 90s. Now, the only reason to choose one of these legacy formats is if you're sharing a file with somebody who doesn't have Illustrator CC. They have an older version of the software. And there's only really two of these options I would generally recommend. And to demonstrate what I'm talking about, I'll go ahead and switch to Illustrator CS3 for a moment here, at which point I'll get a warning. You're always going to see a warning when you work with an archival format. And the warnings are somewhat documented down here at the bottom. Notice that it's saying any hidden appearance attributes will be discarded. Well, that's a pretty advanced warning. We're not going to really spend that much time with the appearance panel until the advanced course. And it's not really true. So let me explain what's going on. If you go back to Illustrator CS3, you're going to lose your artboards. because CS3 and earlier didn't support artboards. So what you're going to end up with is just one artboard right there in the center of this document. All of the numbers will be preserved, but they won't have their artboard information. So what you probably want to do in a case like this, if you go to CS3 or earlier, is to save each artboard to a separate file, at which point you can either save all the artboards or you can specify a range. For example, if I change this range value to 2, 5 through 7, then I'm saying that I want to save pages 2, 5, 6, and 7, each one of them as a separate document. If for some reason you need to save a backward compatible file and you want to make sure you preserve all your artboards, then you need to go with at least Illustrator CS4. The problem with the CS4 format, and I know I'm getting technical here, but I want you to know everything. If you go with Illustrator CS4, the one problem you're going to have is with any raster effects. And you may recall that raster effects include things that are better represented using pixels, and these include, most obviously, drop shadows and glows. In which case, those effects are going to be converted to embedded images, which is definitely not what you want. So what I generally do is go with Illustrator CS6. And that's because 99.9% of the time, the way things stand right now, you're not losing anything, and you can share your files with folks who haven't bought in to the Creative Cloud program. And so assuming that's what I want to do, then I do need to make one change, which is to turn off Save Each Artboard to a Separate File, so that I'm saving all the artboards to a single document. You don't have to worry about this subsetting fonts option, just leave it alone and go ahead and click OK in order to save that file. All right, there's just one more option I want you to know about. I'm going to go to the File menu and choose the Save As command once more so that I can show you the file format option that's available to you. I mentioned this before, but I'll say it again. Almost always, you're going to want to go with the Adobe Illustrator.ai format. It's compatible with all of the other Adobe applications out there, and it works beautifully. But just so you know what your options are, you could also save a PDF document. Now, that's not really necessary because a PDF file is already built in to an Adobe Illustrator file by default. The only reason to go with Illustrator EPS is if you're working in a very old school environment with an ancient version of Quark Express, for example. That's when you would need an EPS file. And then finally, SVG stands for Scalable Vector Graphics, and that comes in handy if you want to create a file that can be viewed inside of an internet browser and zoomed in on as well, which is why we'll be looking at that format later when we talk about saving documents for the web. But in most cases, all you want is the native AI format like so. And that, friends, is how you save any and all changes to your document so that you don't lose a single thing here inside Illustrator.